They say betrayal hits you like lightning. They're wrong. Lightning is sudden. Betrayal is slower. It drips. First a smell, then a laugh, then a look that lingers too long somewhere else. It's not thunder that wakes you. It's the creak of a floorboard at 2 a.m. when your wife swears she's just getting water. For months I watched Madison change. Not all at once, but in tiny, almost polite betrayals. The way she started locking her phone, screen always tilted away from me. The sudden gym nights when she came home glowing, not from exercise but from attention. The laughter into her phone, sharp and private, that died the moment I entered the room. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself every couple hits a phase. But paranoia doesn't explain the bar receipt tucked into her coat pocket from a part of town she'd never mentioned visiting. It doesn't explain the way she smelled like smoke when none of her friends smoked. It doesn't explain the nights she came home humming with energy like someone else had wound her up. The tipping point came one Sunday evening. She left her purse on the table, careless, confident I'd never look. But I did. Inside was a velvet pouch, the kind jewelers use to make you feel richer than you are. And inside the pouch, black box, protection, a brand we never touched because we never needed them. 6 years of marriage and suddenly my wife was armed for battles we didn't fight. I sat there with the box in my hand, breathing slowly. That was the moment grief turned into clarity. She wasn't slipping, she wasn't lost. She was lying, and not even carefully. That night, I didn't confront her. I waited. And while I waited, I planned. I took the box upstairs, I opened it. With the patience of a man who's been silent too long, I made sure those little secrets wouldn't serve their purpose. The box went back into her purse, neat as before. She never noticed. Of course she didn't. Madison lived in a world where she thought no one was watching, and I smiled for the first time in months. Not because I wanted revenge in the traditional sense, but because I had finally flipped the script. Sooner or later, the play would collapse. And when it did, I'd be in the front row, waiting for the curtain call. That's how it went for weeks. Me watching, her lying, both of us pretending the stage lights hadn't already gone out. And then the chance finally came. She announced all casual confidence that she was heading to Talia's for a girls' night. Her smile was too wide, her hug too quick, her perfume too heavy. She left like she had a script in her pocket, so I played my part. I didn't chase, I didn't call. I just sat in the dark kitchen, the clock glowing like a spotlight, waiting for the moment she'd stumble back through the door. The stage was set, curtain about to rise. The microwave clock glared at me like a smug witness. 3:07 a.m. I sat in the dark kitchen, waiting. Not for my wife, not exactly. More for the story she'd invent when she finally showed up. The lock clicked, the door side open. Madison walked in on heels that didn't respect the hour. Perfume first, smoke second, and not the polite kind of smoke. This one carried laughter that wasn't mine. "Oh," she gasped, seeing me. "You scared me." "That makes two of us." She dropped her jacket with fake domestic grace. "What are you doing up? Waiting to hear how movie night ended?" "Chad, don't start. I was at Talia's. Popcorn, bad movie, girls' night. You want proof? I can Venmo you for the popcorn." "Interesting," I said lightly. Talia posted about her migraine at 9:30. From her bed, alone. Her face stayed calm, but her eyes did that tiny freeze athletes do before they foul. "I went later," she tried. "Started the migraine with her?" She rolled her eyes. "Paranoid again. You know how you get." I stood, slow and deliberate, and picked up her purse. Expensive leather, the kind we bought back when we still played the role of winning couple. Madison didn't stop me, just watched, curious, like a critic waiting for the first bad note. Inside, wallet, lipstick, bar receipt from the other side of town. Then the velvet pouch. Inside it, the black box we never needed. I set it on the table. The sound it made was small, but my chest heard it like a verdict. Madison's lips bent into a performance smile. "What are you doing, Chad?" "You tell me. Those aren't mine." "Strange. They're fluent in your purse's dialect." "You're paranoid." "I know. A few weeks ago you left these in here, so—" I leaned closer. "Let's just say I erased their usefulness completely." Her face, stone for 2 seconds, finally cracked. A swallow, a flicker. Then she forced a laugh. "That's insane." "Then you're safe. If you're not using them, nothing to worry about." She looked at the box like it might confess out loud. Then she turned back to me with fake tenderness. "You need help. This jealousy—" "You said you were at Talia's," I cut in. "She was in bed. Madison, you smell like sweat and smoke." "Do you hear yourself? You're building conspiracies out of laundry." "I'm building a memory," I said, "and checking your math." Her voice sharpened. "I'm not standing trial because my husband is bored." There it was, the word that mattered. Bored. "Bored," I repeated. "That's marriage now?" "That's your marriage," she said. Beautiful, precise, lethal. She leaned in with contempt that tasted like honesty. "You know the saddest part? You used to be interesting." That was the knife. Not sharp, not bloody, just clinical. I nodded. "Thank you. For proving I'm a monster? For telling me the truth. Now we can stop acting." I picked up her phone. Same passcode she never thought I'd use. Messages. A thread labeled simply, J. "Don't," she warned. Too late. "Jay, you good? Jay, that was crazy. Jay, lay low." "Lay low," I read aloud. "Cute code." "Chad, stop." More messages scrolled up. "You looked incredible. He suspects." The banality of betrayal. Ugly not in deed, but in grammar. "Who's Jay?" I asked, though I already knew. "That's none of your business." "It's my wife's business. That makes it mine." "It's a friend." "The kind who spots you at the gym," I said. Her flinch was microscopic. That was all I needed. Jackson, the trainer. The one she'd mentioned like an afterthought too many times. "Jesus, Chad, you're connecting random dots." "You have a life," I said, "just not here." She smiled, soft and venomous. That's what happens when someone stops being interesting. The clock said 3:19. Lies were tired. I sent the whole thread to my email, then backed it up to a flash drive labeled Exit, filing evidence like taxes, admin therapy. Madison watched, arms crossed, saintly contempt in her face. "This is pathetic. You called me paranoid. I called IT." She shook her head. "I'm going to bed." "Of course. Tomorrow will be busy." "Why?" "Because the show's over. Strike time." She walked upstairs, heels like a countdown, left the black box on the table like a tip. I sat there with the hum of the fridge and the glow of the flash drive's tiny light. Not angry, not broken, ready. Morning arrived like a bill collector, blunt, unavoidable, and smug about being right on time. Madison floated through the kitchen in my t-shirt like a runway model advertising apathy. She poured coffee without asking, because asking is for people who accept the concept of no. "Rough night?" she asked, casual. "Educational?" I said. "Good," she murmured, scrolling her phone. I watched her sip my coffee like it was hers. The performance was flawless. Unbothered wife, ordinary morning, nothing to see here. Too bad I already had screenshots, timestamps, and a flash drive labeled Exit in my pocket. By noon, while I was pretending to care about emails, she texted me a picture. Not of brunch, not of a latte. A sonogram. Black and white, grainy, the kind meant to collapse men into obedience. Underneath, "It's yours." I stared at the screen like it was auditioning for a horror film. My reply was one word, test. Typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, reappeared. "Madison, you're unbelievable. This is how you react?" I set the phone face down. Next to it sat the black box from her purse. Exhibit A. The picture glowing under the glass was Exhibit B. Together they looked like a mismatched art installation. Lies curated. That evening she leaned against the counter like nothing was wrong. So, no excitement about the baby? I'll get excited when science gets involved, I said. You're cruel. No, Madison. Cruel is sleeping with someone else and then sending me their ultrasound like it's a birthday card. She froze for half a second before smoothing it over with a smile. You really think I don't think. I read. I tapped the flash drive in my pocket. Her eyes narrowed. You're pathetic. And you're sloppy, I said. Not a great combination. The next day, the cavalry arrived in the form of Talia. She knocked on my door while Madison was at yoga. Yoga now meant cardio with Jackson, and afterward whatever counted as stretching. Talia looked like a woman who had rehearsed 10 openings and hated all of them. She sat at the kitchen table, avoiding my eyes. Finally, she slid her phone across. I shouldn't be doing this, she whispered. On the screen, a chat thread. Madison and another man. Not Jackson. A different name. Nate. Lines of text scrolled like graffiti on a sinking ship. Can't wait until you're free. We'll fake whatever test we need. He'll believe anything if I cry hard enough. Talia's voice shook. I told myself she was just venting, but then she bragged about it. About how easy it was to spin you. I leaned back in my chair. Sarcasm tried to rise, but even sarcasm had manners. It gave grief the floor first. So not just one affair, a whole franchise. Talia winced. I covered for her. I shouldn't have. I thought it was harmless. Cheating's many things, I said, but harmless isn't one of them. She nodded, eyes wet. I couldn't keep watching. You don't deserve this. I stared at the phone. At Nate's promises, Madison's plotting. My wife wasn't slipping. She was sprinting downhill. Thank you, Talia, I said. You just gave me the whole playbook. That night, Madison stormed in. Hair perfect, eyes sharp. She slammed her bag down. Why is Talia not answering my calls? Maybe because she grew a conscience, I said. Madison's lips curled. You went behind my back. You went behind our marriage, I replied. Multiple times. Jackson, Nate, should I keep guessing or start alphabetizing? Her face twisted. You think you're so smart, but you're just pathetic. Snooping. Building your little case files. No real man does that. No real man, I echoed. Got it. Good thing I stopped auditioning for your definition of one. She stepped closer, eyes burning. You're destroying this marriage. I laughed. Short, sharp, and not the friendly kind. Sweetheart, you bulldozed this marriage months ago. I'm just drawing the chalk outline. Madison's hand twitched like she wanted to slap me, but she settled for spitting words. You're going to regret this. Everyone will know what kind of monster you are. Perfect, I said. Make sure you spell my name right when you post about it. 2 days later, the campaign began. Long texts full of accusations. You're cold. You're cruel. You made me cheat. Then the smear tour. Whispers to mutual friends. Hints at work. Little sob stories where she was the fragile bird and I was the cage. What she didn't realize was that I had already shown the evidence to the one person who mattered. Myself. Once you stop doubting your own memory, their lies lose their teeth. By the end of the week, Madison tried her grand performance. She stomped through the bedroom, throwing clothes into suitcases, slamming drawers. You've pushed me to this, she shouted. You and your paranoia, you forced me to leave my own home. I leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed. Make sure to pack the black box. Wouldn't want to forget your souvenirs. She spun. You think this is funny? A little, I said, like watching a bad actress blame the audience for her lines. She stuffed the suitcase and dragged it to the door, huffing like a martyr. You'll regret this, Chad. One day you'll realize what you lost. Already realized? I said calmly. And I'm celebrating. The door slammed. The silence it left behind wasn't empty. It was relief, dressed in quiet. The following morning, her texts started again, a desperate sequel no one asked for. More accusations, more victim scripts, but each word carried less weight, like currency from a bankrupt nation. I sipped my coffee, scrolled through the flood of messages, and finally muted the thread. Evidence folder updated, silence restored. The house hummed like it agreed with me. Lies don't sprint, they jog, steady, smug, the kind of pace that says, "Why run? He'll never catch up anyway." Madison's lies had been jogging for months. By the time she dragged her suitcase out of the house with all the drama of a soap opera audition, I wasn't chasing, I was timing her. She didn't leave a forwarding address, of course. She just vanished under pressure. In her version of events, she was the poor wife driven out by paranoia and cruelty. In my version, she'd moved out to give her boyfriends a more flexible schedule. Either way, the house was quiet. Blessedly, beautifully quiet. And quiet makes room for planning. The witness breaks. 2 days into Madison's exile, Talia came over again. This time she didn't whisper. She looked like someone who'd just realized silence can turn you into an accomplice. She slid her phone across my kitchen table like it was evidence in a trial. You need to see this, Chad." It was another thread. Madison and Nate. Different tone this time. Not just flirting. Strategy. "Once I move in, he won't have a leg to stand on. We can fake the timeline. He'll look like the villain anyway. Talia will back me up if needed." Talia's voice cracked. "She used me. She thought I'd testify for her if things went to court. She said you were too weak to fight back." I leaned back, stared at her. "Do you still plan to back her up?" Talia shook her head fast, shame all over her face. I can't. I covered for her, and it was wrong. But I won't lie for her in front of a judge." I studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Then you're not part of the problem anymore. You're part of the file." Her eyes widened. "File?" I tapped the flash drive on the table. "Every lie has a folder now. Every name, every screenshot. It's not paranoia anymore, Talia. It's discovery." The switch inside. That night, sitting alone in the house Madison abandoned, something clicked. I'd been waiting for months, waiting for proof, waiting for a confession, waiting for the moment when her mask would fall. But waiting is what prey does. Predators plan. I realized Madison wasn't slipping. She wasn't confused. She wasn't acting out. This was who she was. Her affairs weren't accidents, they were infrastructure. Once you see the architecture, you stop patching the roof. You start tearing down the whole building. So, I made a list. Collect every message. Back up to multiple drives. Secure financial records. Call Dana Harding. Dana's name came from a friend, a divorce attorney with a reputation for smiling while she burned your enemies alive. Exactly the sort of ally I needed. Contact. The next morning I picked up the phone. My thumb hovered over Dana's number longer than I'd like to admit. Calling her meant it was real. It meant no more pretending I was in a marriage. I dialed. She answered on the second ring with the kind of voice that could sell knives door to door. "Dana Harding." "Chad Walker," I said. "I need representation. Marital or criminal? Depends who you ask. But officially, divorce." "Good," she said briskly. "When?" "Soon. My wife just moved out." "Perfect," she replied, as if she'd been waiting for me to say it. "Bring everything you have. Screenshots, bank statements, whatever dirt she left on the carpet. The cleaner the file, the sharper the cut." I almost smiled. "I have a very clean file." "Then you're already ahead of most men," she said. "We'll meet tomorrow." Of course, Madison wasn't done. From wherever she'd nested, maybe Nate's, maybe some rented martyr's suite, she launched her full campaign. Long Facebook posts dripping with victimhood. Driven from my home by cruelty. Late-night texts. "You'll regret this. You'll never find someone like me." Even a call to my boss, claiming I was emotionally unstable. The difference now? I didn't flinch. Each new outburst went straight into the exit folder. Another line of evidence. Another nail for Dana to hammer. By the end of the week, it hit me with perfect clarity. Madison didn't just cheat, she thrived on it. She needed the games, the lies, the drama. Monogamy wasn't a vow she broke. It was a costume she wore until it itched. And me? I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her alibi. Once I saw it that way, everything sharpened. The grief quieted. The anger cooled. All that remained was focus. I wasn't fighting for a marriage. I was dismantling a fraud. I poured myself a drink, looked at the black box she'd left behind, and toasted it like a trophy. To Madison, I said aloud, the best evidence I never asked for. Tomorrow I'd walk into Dana's office. Tomorrow the war would get paperwork. But tonight I savored the quiet of a house no longer polluted by her lies. And I realized silence wasn't just peace. It was victory, rehearsing for the finale. When Madison finally came back, she didn't knock. Of course she didn't. People who believe they own the stage never pause before stepping onto it. The door swung open, suitcase rolling behind her, her face arranged into that trembling mask of tragedy she must have rehearsed in the mirror. "So this is what you wanted?" she asked, her voice quivering on cue. "Me, driven out of my own home?" I looked up from my laptop where Dana's email still glowed on the screen, court dates highlighted like warning flares. "You left on your own, Madison. Suitcase, slammed doors, dramatic exit. It wasn't me pushing you out. That was you auditioning." Her eyes narrowed. "You drove me out." "No," I said evenly, leaning back in my chair. "I just stopped applauding." She dropped the suitcase in the hallway with a heavy thud and stormed closer. Tears, rage, wounded bird tremors, she cycled through them like costume changes. It was like watching a magician pull the same rabbit from the same hat again and again, hoping the audience had amnesia. "You broke me, Chad," she shouted, her voice rising until it cracked. "You ruined this marriage." I shut the laptop with a calm click. "No, Madison, you ruined the marriage. I'm just writing the footnotes." For a moment she froze, torn between collapsing into another act or storming out again. Then she straightened her back, grabbed the suitcase handle. "You think you've pushed me out?" she hissed. "You don't get rid of me that easily. This is still my house, my life. You'll have to drag me out in court if you want me gone." I almost smiled. Perfect. That's exactly where we're going. So she stayed. Not out of love, not even out of spite, out of pride. Because walking away would have looked like defeat, and Madison never lost willingly. Every slammed cupboard, every exaggerated sigh, every late-night shuffle through the hallway was her way of reminding me that she was still here, still performing, still demanding the spotlight. I let her, because the longer she performed, the more evidence I collected. Screenshots of her late-night texts to Nate, receipts from nights she claimed to be with Talia, little breadcrumbs she dropped without realizing I was no longer eating her bread. All of it went neatly into the folder Dana had asked me to prepare. When I spoke with Dana on the phone, her tone was steady, almost amused. "She's unraveling. That's perfect. Every tantrum under that roof, every message, every slip. It all makes our case sharper. Let her stay. Let her dig." I chuckled. "Glad someone's enjoying the theater." "Chad," Dana replied, dry as sandpaper. "I don't enjoy." "I win, and you're next in line." Court came sooner than I expected. No screaming, no fireworks, just fluorescent lights and the low hum of bureaucracy. Madison arrived polished to look like innocence itself. Pearls, pale dress, eyes wide with victimhood. Her lawyer sat stiff beside her, muttering objections that sounded more like apologies. She spun her story in broad strokes: paranoia, cruelty, claims that she had been pushed out and was afraid for her well-being. Theatrical pauses, trembling hands. She was in her element. But theater only works with an audience. The judge wasn't buying tickets. Dana slid a neat folder across the table: screenshots, timestamps, receipts, chat logs. "Your Honor," she said, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet, "these speak louder than her performance." The judge barely looked up from the folder. "Indeed they do." Madison played her last card in court. Pregnancy. She stood there, hand on her stomach, voice breaking in all the right places. "No matter what he says, I'm carrying his child." I didn't blink. Dana only smiled thinly. "Your Honor, we request a paternity test." Madison laughed it off, called it cruel, called me paranoid. But the judge agreed. Science, after all, doesn't care about performances. The meeting has been postponed until we receive the results. Weeks later, the results arrived. The judge read them out flat. No emotion. Probability of paternity, 0%. Mr. Walker is excluded as the father. The courtroom went silent. Madison's face drained of color, then twisted with fury. "That's impossible," she snapped, voice cracking. I leaned in just enough for her to hear. "It was never mine. Not the child, not the marriage, not you." Madison's face cracked for the first time. The mask of sorrow slipped just for a heartbeat, enough to show the rage boiling underneath. She leaned toward me when the judge left the bench for recess, whispering through clenched teeth, "You think you've won? You'll be alone. Nobody will ever want you." I smiled faintly. "Better alone than with you. At least silence doesn't cheat." By the time the gavel came down, it was official. The house was mine. The accounts were secure. Donna closed her briefcase with the precision of someone clearing a chessboard after checkmate. Outside, autumn air felt sharper, freer. Madison stormed down the courthouse steps, muttering into her phone, already rewriting the script for whichever poor soul would listen next. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I walked away lighter than I'd felt in years. No begging, no pleading, no confusion left. Just a folder under my arm and silence waiting at home. When I opened the door, the house exhaled, relieved of her ghost. I poured a drink, sat at the kitchen table where all this had started, and set the flash drive labeled exit in front of me. For months it had been a burden. Tonight it was a trophy. Madison had called me paranoid, cruel, boring, unworthy. But in the end, she was the one dragging her suitcase back in, only to declare she'd never leave. The one clinging to a stage where the lights had already gone dark. And I was the one left standing in a house no longer polluted by her lies. The silence, that sweet, patient silence, was mine. Divorce isn't the end of a war. It's the silence that follows the last shot. And silence is where the truth finally settles. Madison didn't vanish after the judge's gavel fell. People like her never vanish. They linger. She bounced between excuses and rented sympathy, calling old friends until most stopped answering. Word spreads quickly when your story doesn't match the receipts. The ones who once clapped for her dramas quietly slipped out of the theater. I heard she tried staying with Nate for a while, but he wasn't built for curtain calls. He folded the moment things got real. Jackson kept his head down at the gym, avoiding eye contact with anyone who might ask questions. Eventually, Madison's options shrank, like a stage getting darker, one light at a time. Talia came by a few weeks after the dust settled. She stood in the doorway awkwardly, then smiled, almost relieved. "I'm glad you got out, Chad. I kept thinking she'd pull you down with her." I poured her coffee, and for the first time in months, I drank it without feeling poison in the air. Talia admitted she'd felt guilty, that she'd covered for Madison longer than she should have. But she also said what I needed to hear. "You weren't crazy. You just loved the wrong person too long." It wasn't forgiveness. It was recognition. Sometimes, that's worth more. As for Madison, her pregnancy excuse burned out faster than she thought. Once the test proved what I'd known all along, she tried to spin it as a mistake or miscalculation. But mistakes don't text gym trainers at midnight. Miscalculations don't buy boxes of protection and hide them in purses. People saw through her, and the sympathy dried up. She still calls sometimes, long voicemails about how I ruined her, How I'll never find someone like her. Maybe she's right. I don't want to. The house is mine now. Clean, quiet, no perfume hanging in the hallway, no fake laughter bouncing off the walls. Just me, the steady tick of the clock, and the comfort of knowing the next sound at the door won't be another performance. I see friends again. I laugh again. Even Talia drops by once in a while, and though neither of us says it out loud, I can tell she's relieved I didn't collapse under Madison's act. She confessed once, almost guiltily. I think she believed she'd never be caught. She thought she was smarter than everyone. Then she miscalculated twice, I told her. Once with me, and once with herself. Sometimes I still think back to that black box I found in her purse weeks before everything broke. I remember the weight of it in my hand, the needle between my fingers, the cold certainty that I had finally stopped being the oblivious husband. That was the night I reclaimed myself. Everything after was just confirmation. People ask if I feel bitter. I don't. Bitter is for those still holding the glass. I put mine down. Madison always needed an audience. And me? I finally learned how good it feels when the curtain closes. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.